What would have happened if the men who played their role in Jesus' death had actually supported him and the justice? Perhaps Jesus would have not been crucified. We all know the details of the events leading to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, where men at every turn either tortured, betrayed, caused trouble, and gave the verdict to crucify Jesus. However, little or no information is available about what happened to those men and what was their end. But what really happened to these men who bore the weight of troubling and killing Jesus, a weight they could not carry for long? How did their lives take horrible turns after they crucified Jesus Christ and were soon made horrible examples by God? Welcome to a new episode of Uncovering Untold Stories, a channel where we talk about the secret and hidden historical stories of the past that find their roots in religious and history books. It's a place where you will hear the most unorthodox and hard-to-believe stories that have been forgotten but are part of history, shaping our lives to this day. In this episode, we will tell you about the terrifying deaths of the men who killed Jesus Christ. Number 1. Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is introduced in the Gospels as one of the 12 disciples, but he is often listed last, signifying his association with betrayal. The name Iscariot is believed to indicate that Judas came from the village of Kerioth, distinguishing him from the other disciple named Judas, who is often referred to as Thaddeus or Lebbaeus. Judas's betrayal of Jesus occurred during the final days of Jesus' ministry. The biblical accounts, primarily found in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, provide insights into Judas's actions and their consequences. His involvement in Jesus' crucifixion began with his decision to betray Jesus. Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 16 describes Judas approaching the chief priests with the intention of betraying Jesus. He asked the religious authorities what they were willing to give him in exchange for delivering Jesus into their hands. The chief priests agreed to pay him 30 pieces of silver, a significant amount at the time. Following this transaction, Judas actively sought an opportunity to betray Jesus. He had to prove that he was of use to the authorities, so he waited for the right moment. That moment came, and Judas led a group of soldiers and religious leaders to Jesus, identifying him with a kiss as a sign of betrayal. Matthew chapter 26, verses 47 to 50 states, "While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. 'The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him.' Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, 'Greetings, Rabbi,' and kissed him. Jesus replied, 'Do what you came for, friend.' Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him." This moment of Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane marks the beginning of his journey through subsequent trials and crucifixion as foretold in the scriptures. Judas became the very man who got Jesus arrested, without whom it would have been impossible for authorities to have Jesus in their hands. Judas's actions have been widely regarded as a great betrayal. The betrayal of Jesus by one of his closest disciples is remembered as a significant event that fulfilled prophecies and played a crucial role in the redemptive narrative of Christianity. Following his act of betrayal, Judas experienced deep remorse and regret. The Bible provides specific details about Judas's death in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 27, verses 3 to 10. The passage describes the aftermath of Judas Iscariot's betrayal of Jesus and his subsequent remorse. Realizing that Jesus had been condemned, Judas felt deep regret for his actions and returned the 30 pieces of silver, the payment he had received for betraying Jesus, to the chief priests and elders. He confessed his sin, acknowledging that he had betrayed innocent blood. However, the religious leaders callously dismissed his remorse, stating that it was his responsibility to deal with the consequences of his actions. Nothing could give him peace now, given the scale of sin he had committed. Overwhelmed by guilt, Judas threw the money into the temple and left. He then went away and hanged himself, a tragic act of suicide driven by his overwhelming remorse and despair. The chief priests, upon finding the returned money, recognized that it was considered blood money and unfit to be put into the temple treasury according to Jewish law. Instead, they decided to use the money to purchase a potter's field, which would serve as a burial place for foreigners. This purchase fulfilled the prophecy spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, which mentioned the 30 pieces of silver being used to buy a potter's field. Another biblical account recorded in the book of Acts chapter 1 verses 16 to 19 provides a continuation on the death of Judas. According to this passage, Judas chose a different location for his suicide, and after hanging, Judas fell headlong, his head hitting the ground first from a height, and the impact caused his body to burst open, spilling his intestines. This gruesome death is portrayed as divine retribution for his betrayal. Number 2. The high priest Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council. The Jewish religious authorities, particularly the high priest Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, played significant roles in the religious and legal affairs of the Jewish people during Jesus' time. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John detail their involvement in the events leading up to Jesus' crucifixion. The high priest was the most prominent religious figure in Judaism, responsible for overseeing temple rituals, interpreting the law, and representing the Jewish people before God. The office of the high priest was hereditary and wielded considerable religious and political influence. Caiaphas, who served as the high priest, was appointed by the Roman authorities and played a central role in Jesus' trial and crucifixion. The Sanhedrin, also known as the Jewish Council or the Great Sanhedrin, was a governing body composed of religious leaders, elders, and scholars. It consisted of 71 members, including the high priest, and dealt with matters pertaining to Jewish law, religious doctrine, and community affairs. The religious authorities saw Jesus as a threat to their authority and the established religious order. They accused him of blasphemy for claiming to be the Son of God and the Messiah, which they considered a violation of Jewish law. Their goal was to discredit Jesus and convince the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, to condemn him to death. Regarding the subsequent lives and fates of Caiaphas and the members of the Sanhedrin after Jesus' crucifixion, the biblical accounts provide limited information. However, historical records and other sources offer some insights. Caiaphas continued to serve as high priest until around 36 AD. His tenure was marked by challenges, including tensions with Roman authorities and internal power struggles within the Jewish community. Eventually, he was deposed from his position by the Romans. The fate of other members of the Sanhedrin is not explicitly mentioned in the Bible. Nonetheless, the Sanhedrin continued to play a significant role in Jewish religious and legal affairs for several centuries after Jesus' crucifixion. However, it had lost legitimacy and credibility in the eyes of the people. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos about little heard and untold real historical stories. Let's continue now. Number 3. Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate, the 5th prefect of the Roman province of Judea, is a notable historical figure mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible, primarily for his significant role in the trial and crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Appointed by the Roman Emperor Tiberius, Pilate's duties included maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, and ensuring the stability of Roman rule in Judea, which included Jerusalem and its surrounding areas. In the Gospel accounts, Pilate is portrayed as the Roman authority who presided over Jesus' trial. According to these narratives, Jewish religious leaders brought Jesus before Pilate, seeking his execution. This story is detailed in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew chapter 27 verses 11 to 26 offers a comprehensive account of Jesus' trial before Pilate. It says, "Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' Jesus said, 'You have said so.' But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, 'Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?' But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted, and they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, 'Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?' For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, 'Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream.'" Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. The biblical accounts do not provide detailed information about what happened to Pontius Pilate after the crucifixion of Jesus. However, historical records and other sources offer glimpses into his later life. Both the Roman historian Tacitus and the Jewish historian Josephus mention Pilate. Tacitus portrays Pilate's governance as marked by corruption and cruelty, which stirred considerable unrest among the Jewish population. Josephus also records instances where Pilate's decisions led to violent clashes with the Jews. Specific details about Pilate's later years and his ultimate fate remain scant in historical documentation. Nevertheless, some sources provide potential insights. Eusebius of Caesarea, an early Christian historian, references a letter from Emperor Tiberius to Pilate, criticizing his harsh rule and instructing him to return to Rome. Outside the Bible, various religious texts and traditions offer divergent perspectives on Pilate's end. For instance, the apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus depicts Pilate's downfall, describing him being exiled to Gaul, where he eventually takes his own life. Number 4. Emperor Tiberius. Tiberius was the emperor of the Roman Empire with a keen focus on maintaining stability and efficient administration. However, he typically kept his focus away from regions like Judea, trusting local officials to handle the day-to-day affairs and legal matters. In the case of Jesus, Pontius Pilate held significant authority as the Roman prefect of Judea. It was Pilate who made the decisive call to sentence Jesus to crucifixion, responding to pressures from local Jewish leaders and a restless crowd. Tiberius, based in Rome and occupied with imperial matters, likely had little direct knowledge of the unfolding events surrounding Jesus' trial and execution in Judea. However, he really was responsible for keeping justice, and Jesus' crucifixion was a weight on his shoulders. The circumstances surrounding Tiberius's death, as chronicled by Roman historian Suetonius, remain shrouded in suspicion. Accounts say he was assassinated by his great-nephew Caligula, who later became notorious for his turbulent reign as emperor. This shift in power underscored the volatile and risky political climate of ancient Rome, where even rulers faced threats from within their own family circles. Number 5. Apostle Peter. About Apostle Peter, there are conflicting opinions about whether he was responsible for Jesus' death or not. However, it's reported that Apostle Peter, a devoted follower of Jesus, played a pivotal role during Jesus' trial and arrest. Peter famously denied knowing Jesus 3 times, fulfilling a prophecy foretold by Jesus himself that Peter would disown him before the rooster crowed. Despite his moment of weakness, Peter deeply regretted his actions and experienced profound remorse. Following Jesus' resurrection and ascension, Peter emerged as a central figure in the early Christian movement, boldly proclaiming Jesus' teachings and the miraculous resurrection. Peter's faith and leadership, however, made him a target for persecution. Around 64 AD, during Emperor Nero's reign in Rome, Peter was arrested and sentenced to death by crucifixion. Tradition holds that Peter requested to be crucified upside down, feeling unworthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. This act of humility and sacrifice became a symbol of Peter's enduring faith and the challenges faced by early Christians under Roman rule. What do you think? Are the horrific deaths of the men who killed Jesus a sign that they committed a terrible sin? Isn't it true that if Jesus had wanted, he would have escaped death, but he chose death for humanity? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on the fact that Jesus was crucified so his message could be stopped, but even his crucifixion could not stop his teachings. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on stories that might sound controversial, mysterious, and shocking, but are real and have roots in religious books like the Bible and history books. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.